Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies. And welcome to another edition of Full Disclosure. With Full Disclosure, we look at movies that are fresh off the I don't know what you call it, the digital projector at this point, and we spoil the hell out of them. So today we're going to be looking at the brand new film that just came out a few days ago. Yes, we're actually on time for once, and that is War for the Planet of the Apes. My name is Scott, and with me here today is
Ryan Lutens. Greetings, everyone.
Ryan is back with us, fresh from the Aliens flashback, which is still listed on the website as Alien, Jeremy, but close enough. And we're here to talk about the third, and I would say probably final film in the Caesar trilogy, the Apes reboot trilogy, and that is War for the Planet of the Apes. But before we begin, we want to make sure everyone knows that we are going to be spoiling the hell out of this movie. So if you have not watched the movie, and let me first off and say, I think Ryan will agree on this, it's a very good movie. So make sure you go see it before we spoil it for you. But if you are okay with being spoiled, or if you've already seen the movie, you can stick with us. And in 3, 2, 1, Caesar dies and there is no war.
There is no war.
Which I'm okay with. The fact that this movie is full of misdirects is one of the things I like about it, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So first, let's talk about our first impressions. And I know Ryan hasn't had a chance to talk about it, but I don't think I've had a chance to talk about my love for Planet of the Apes. So we're going to go first impressions of this reboot trilogy, Ryan, but also your experience with Planet of the Apes prior to the reboots, and just kind of give us your gist of where you are with this series. So go ahead.
So for me, watching Charlton Heston on TV in Planet of the Apes is one that you cannot really get away from because it's always on some channel here and there, and they usually do some type of marathon there. But you watch the first Planet of the Apes, and then of course the sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and you're thinking, man, these two movies are awesome. Especially Planet of the Apes. It's a classic. You can't get away from that. It's endured time, and it's one of those things where from there you have this reboot because people want to go back to that. And after you have a failed attempt by Tim Burton, people were clamming for more. And so they take this idea from the other sequels of the Charlton Heston movies, Conquest and what was the other one? Escape.
Five, sir.
Yeah.
Planet, Beneath, Escape, Conquest, and Battle.
That's right. Yep.
I'm a bit of a geek.
But they have this idea of Caesar, and they explore that in the newer ones, which my friends, I have a lot of trouble with my friends because they all think these movies suck, and I'm like, these movies are amazing, and they only get better as they go. This last movie was phenomenal, and they really pay great respect to everything that embodied the older movies. So, I think the older movies set the bar, and the new ones lived up to that bar by paying homage, but being their own original story.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on everything you said. I'm a big fan of the original series, all of them, honestly. Obviously, the budget went down and the quality went down on these movies as they went on, but I still think the story is great. For those who have not seen the 5 original, you should. For one, if you check out our Twilight Zone Zonasodes retrospective, Rod Serling wrote the script for the first Planet of the Apes. It is basically a Twilight Zone movie, and it's great for that reason. But you have originally, obviously, the story of these humans traveling into the future and finding a planet of apes that turns out to be Earth. Surprise, it's Earth. But once you get past the first 2 movies, and I think Beneath actually is probably the worst one just because it's so freaking dark. But once you get past that, it is a story of, at first, Cornelius, which we have an Easter egg for Cornelius here in this movie, but a story of Caesar in the last 3. Mainly the last 2 and a little bit of Escape as well. So the idea of Caesar has been around for a while. And the idea that Caesar helps to create this civilization has been around since the 60s and 70s. But I love the fact that this reboot trilogy, starting with Rise and going through Dawn and now War, we're able to flesh out that idea that not only does how a civilization would start a revolution and come upon itself, but more importantly, especially in this one, and we'll talk about it here as we get going, the story of Caesar himself and the fact that he comes into the story as a young, starting out as a normal ape, but also as just a young character learning his way around the world, but being a natural leader, as we saw in Rise, and then having to deal with everything that comes with that type of leadership in Dawn. And then I think at the beginning of this film, losing that leadership ability and losing his humanity, but then getting it back at the end. So I love the story of Caesar from point A to point B. Tim Burton's movie sucks. I'm just going to ignore that one completely.
I would.
So, Jeremy, let's talk about first.
Who's Jeremy?
Jeremy's not here. Ryan, hi. I'm used to having Jeremy on these things, and I'm also used to Jeremy hosting them. So,
yeah.
So Ryan, hi. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the characters that we liked in this film first. So, throw out a couple of the characters that you enjoyed.
You cannot go wrong with Caesar. Caesar, I mean, he is the focal point of this movie. And if Andy Serkis does not even get any type of consideration for any type of award, I'm going to be rightly.
I swear to God, I'm going to riot. I mean,
I'm going to burn something down.
The guy should have got it for Rise. He definitely should have got it for Dawn. And
he needs to get it for this. Everything about his acting. I mean, you feel so much for Caesar because of what Andy Serkis is doing with his facial expression. I mean, you're seeing Caesar, but you know that Andy Serkis is back there. But it's so believable, and the CGI is just so believable. But we can get into the CGI later. But Caesar, you see his progression from Rise, Dawn, and War, and just the morality of Caesar. I mean, it's so awesome to watch him wrestle with these big issues as these movies progress. And just like seeing him grow. Like in the first movie, he's barely speaking and it's very rough. The second movie, it's very drawn out. It's kind of gruff. And this one, he's speaking and you can understand every word he's saying. There's no gruff. He's his own character, and just watching him progress throughout the movies was awesome. Another character I liked was obviously Woody Harrelson. They called him the Colonel. He's Colonel McCullough, but if there is a villain to be a villain, it was Woody Harrelson, and he owned it. He was phenomenal. I have no words. I mean, he was ruthless, and it was amazing to watch that. Steve Zahn as Bad Ape. Great comic relief. He did not overdo it at all. He was very subtle in his approach, and it was great. And I also liked Nova, being a child actor, and not having any lines and just having to use your facial expressions was quite unique, and she did a really good job. So I really enjoyed Nova.
Yeah, no, I mean, Caesar, as I already mentioned, is the main cups of this story, and I agree with you. Andy Serkis deserves a nomination for the Academy Award for Best Actor. He will not get it because the Academy is full of crap. First and foremost, the Academy is very anti-sci-fi. They always have been. A couple movies will get in there because they're really artsy. Arrival got in kind of last year, but still, they're not going to give them the win. They're not going to be able to show that because they rather give it to Shakespeare in Love and crap like that. I hate that movie. But also, the Academy honestly doesn't understand and know how to deal with this new technology of mocap. They don't get the fact that not only does the actor have to do everything that they would have to do if they were just normally on the screen, but they have to do more because you're doing so much to emote through the CGI makeup. And it's disappointing that he will not get his due. I think it was a couple years ago the Academy gave like a special like presentation or something to him as like the granddaddy of mocap, but he deserves an award for this, or at least a nomination for an award. But like I said, he's not going to get it, and that's disappointing. But that's just kind of where we are. But so Caesar in himself, we'll talk about more about Caesar when we get the things we liked about it. But I love the progression that you get through this. And one of the things I found scouring the internet for news before we recorded this is the scriptwriters for these films honestly looked at Caesar as a real live person to a point where they were putting Christmas presents under the Christmas tree every year to Caesar because they cared about him so much. And you can see that through these movies. Not only did Andy Serkis care about this character, but the writers and the director, the two directors who did the trilogy, cared about this character a lot. So at the end, when, again, spoilers, when Caesar dies, you care a lot about that because you have taken this character through not only this film, but 3 films. I also, again, I loved Bad Ape. When he shows up, his introduction is just amazing. And honestly, I think he has probably the best CGI work of all of the apes in this.
Oh, yeah.
He looks real. And some of the times the other ones look real, sometimes they don't. But for some reason, maybe it's because he's wearing clothing, so it's a little easier to mask for most of it. But he just looks so real. And Woody Harrelson, he plays crazy well. When he's talking about killing his son, he never blinks. I was watching. He never blinks. He just has those crazy eyes. Like, I was given a sign, and therefore I had to kill my son. It's okay. Good for you, Woody. There's a reason why there's an army coming to stop you. But I also like the misdirect with that to where you don't have a boss battle. In all of these movies, and including somewhat in the last one with Koba, and well, not somewhat, you had a boss battle between Koba and Caesar in the last one. In this one, it's more of a great escape, but you don't have that fight. And at the end of it, Woody, the Colonel, succumbs to his greatest fear, and that is this disease that's going around, to a point where it's not a fight between the Colonel and Caesar, it's a fight internally with Caesar if he's going to redeem himself by showing mercy to the Colonel or not. And that's the big fight at the end. And then obviously we got some explosions too and an avalanche, which is interesting. But I like that. I like the misdirect of that the Colonel is obviously the big bad, but we don't have to fight the big bad.
No.
We don't have to deal with that.
The movie says War for the Planet of the Apes, and you're expecting this giant battle at the end.
Well, the poster showed you that too.
There is a battle at the end, but it's not what you think it is, and that's like you were saying, misdirect, and that's the greatest thing this movie has going for it, because you think you're going in and you're just going to sit there and watch a popcorn movie, a blockbuster, something that's going to do well in the summer, but in reality, it's a great movie, brilliantly filmed with huge themes.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and move on to some of our favorite scenes going off that. And I'll start by saying what I do love about this is that the war for the Planet of the Apes is not a war between humans and the apes. You think it is, that we start out kind of like that before we turn into more of a Western Unforgiven type movie. But really the war at the end is between humans versus humans. And the whole theme here, at least for me, is we'll destroy ourselves if we're allowed to, which so the apes are just kind of innocent bystanders trying to make sure they survive through humans just wiping each other out.
And they're all that's left, so it will be a planet of apes.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's, I'll get in that a bit with stuff I didn't like, but so I'll hold off on that. But yeah, I liked the misdirect of that too. One of my favorite scenes is when you have the Colonel and Caesar having that first real face-to-face confrontation in the Colonel's Mad Hatter office, or whatever you want to call it. You've got this Colonel who is believing that he has a way to survive, to help all his guys in the Alpha and Omega battalion survive. But even Caesar right away is starting to look at this guy and say, this guy's not all here. And he starts questioning his tactics. Like, he's looking at this wall of wood and saying, this is not going to hold against an army. What are you trying to do here? And the Colonel, you can tell, too, understands that, yeah, I'm not going to win this. I'm not going to win this fight. Because even when Caesar points out this wall is not going to hold, the colonel's like, "You're smarter than I thought you were." So they're having this intellectual conversation about the fact that they both know they're on losing sides of a fight, and it's an amazing confrontation that never comes to fisticuffs. It's just it's a battle of wits.
Right.
So what are some of the scenes you like?
So like you were saying, that scene where they first meet, and obviously you said that he had to kill his own son. Spoiler alert, the simian flu has evolved, and how I mentioned Nova earlier and how she, doesn't speak. It's because people are regressing. Instead of, so you're either dying. That was the first step of the simian flu. The second step is you revert back to a more primal state. You lose your speech pattern, you lose higher motor function. You're basically digressing back to an ape. Who knows? We'll find out later. But there's that scene where he's talking to Caesar, and twice he says, "You're so intriguing. You're so captivating." He's honoring Caesar, but it's almost like he sees a little bit of himself in Caesar. That's what makes that scene so good. And there's that scene where Caesar tries to lash out, and he goes, "You're so emotional," because he realized that he's not emotional anymore. I really enjoyed through this movie, after Caesar killed Koba, Caesar has flashes of visions of Koba. Caesar is hung up to dry, basically. They're torturing him and starving him out. And in his delirium, he sees Koba approaching him. Really, it's Woody Harrelson. But he's constantly dealing with that decision of killing another ape, a rule that he set. I mean, just so many themes going on in this movie is just nuts. But it's a very complex movie. It was brilliant. So yeah.
No, yeah, I completely agree with you on that, and that's one of the themes that definitely stands out through the simian flu's mutation, through how the colonel dealt with his reaction to it, and how Caesar deals with the death, and we haven't even talked about the death of his first son, Blue Eyes, who we have followed through Dawn and now through War. And I love the scene, by the way, where Blue Eyes shows up with Rocket after they've been kind of scouting ahead to try to find a new place to live, and that camaraderie, that father and son bonding. I mean, you're looking at two fake chimpanzees on screen, but you feel it. And yeah. I didn't catch the foreshadowing, and I should have, because I usually do. But when they started doing all of this, like, Blue Eyes has returned, and we're going to be okay now, like, oh, somebody's going to get killed real quick. So Blue Eyes and Cornelia, who is Caesar's wife, get taken out because the colonel thinks that Blue Eyes was Caesar in the dark. At that point, and what I'm getting at here is the entire theme for all of these is the loss of humanity. Mm-hmm. You have the loss of humanity for human race as a civilization because of the simian flu still being out there. And I think we're led to believe that everyone is basically screwed because it's not airborne per se, but what we assume is that the colonel gets it from touching Nova's doll. So basically, if you have any kind of contact with anyone who has the mutated simian flu strain, you're going to get it. So it seems like it's 100% transferable, which means we're all basically doomed.
Right.
But so you have that loss of humanity, the loss. The colonel thinks it's a loss of your intelligence. I question that because obviously Nova is very intelligent throughout the movie. And even at the end with the colonel, he's smart enough to know he doesn't want to live like this. Right. And he tries to get Caesar to kill him. When Caesar doesn't kill him, he kills himself. So I don't think you're losing your intelligence. You just lose your ability to speak.
Yeah.
At least with this string. But so you have that loss of humanity. Then you have the loss of the colonel's humanity because he decides to give up everything he is, basically by blowing his son's head off, and then also losing his ability to command his troops in a correct way and so forth and so on. But then you have the loss of Caesar's humanity, and I do use the term humanity for this because he's definitely a flawed human character in his own right. And Koba, in his delirious dream, points out to him that, ape should not kill ape. And for this, Caesar's killed two. First, he killed Koba, but then also he killed Winter, the albino ape that helped to get the colonel to
Train.
know where they worked. So at this point, he's lost his humanity too, because he's killed these folks, but also he has sought out on this revenge story that we follow, and so we see that lost humanity, and for all three of these, I think we see the turn, and they regain their humanity. Nova regains her humanity by helping her ape friends. The Colonel regains his humanity by, just killing himself, but that's how you do it, I guess. But then obviously Caesar regains his humanity by helping his people find their promised land, and also not taking that revenge shot that he was offered at the end as well too.
Well, because he was constantly grappling with someone told him that he was Koba. He had turned into Koba since Cornelia and Blue Eyes died, that he wanted revenge on the humans, just like Koba wanted revenge on the humans. So seeing him wrestle with that, I mean, like you said, it's his humanity. It's all in his head. Like, I mean, he couldn't stop it. He knew he was going. He always wanted to go. And then at the end, he's like, it's not worth it. I'm better than this.
Yeah. So what did you have any other scenes that kind of stood out for you? I know we've kind of blown past scenes and gone into themes, but that's
right.
I want to point out again, we're talking about a movie about talking apes, but we're going into much more thematic detail than we do on most films because it's that good of a movie. It's that good of a story.
Scenes. I really, really enjoyed when they after Winter sold out Caesar and said where their camp was. There is some great cinematography. That, I mean, the tension in that scene as these commandos are coming to take out Caesar. They don't want to kill any other apes. They just want to take out Caesar, and that's how Blue Eyes gets mistaken. But just how that scene plays out, the tension built up, because you're only seeing through the darkness based on laser pointers at some points. And then when the apes attack soldiers, you just see gunshots. And I mean, what they do with the lighting and it's just a really riveting scene. You're really rooting for the apes to get out of there with no one harmed, and really evokes emotion.
Yeah. And, a couple other things about that scene too. One is the tension, you're right. And the fact that you don't really know what's going to go on. You're hoping that everyone's going to make it out, and they do a good misdirect where you don't think that Blue Eyes and Cornelia are going to die. I was figuring throughout the movie that Maurice was going to die.
That's what I thought too.
I also thought that during Dawn too, when he was captured. I was like, Maurice is just he's dead man walking, because it's always the sidekick, the person who is the right hand man of the leader who always gets bit. So I was assuming Maurice was going to take it there. But he obviously didn't. He survives through the entire film, which I'm still surprised by. I also thought he was going to eat it to protect Nova at some point, but that didn't happen either. Another misdirect. But I love when Caesar realizes what happened, and he gets into the room just in time to see the Colonel trying to escape. And there is a very slow turn where the Colonel turns around and sees Caesar, and Caesar sees him. And they play it so well. The direction on this, it could have been a quick scene. It could have been straight to an action shot where they're climbing up the rope and trying to kill each other. But they take their time. I didn't time it, but it had to have been at least a minute of those two just staring each other down before the Colonel picks up the gun and tries to kill Caesar again. Well, and it's such good work on the director's side of things.
It's also that moment too where they both realize who each other are, because Caesar walks in, he's heard of this Colonel, and then when he sees Woody Harrelson, he's like, "You're it." And then Woody Harrelson, he's like, "Oh crap, I killed the wrong person." And then because Blue Eyes is laying dead, Blue Eyes and Cornelia are laying dead at Caesar's feet. As he realizes what's going on, they're in this waterfall base, and the Colonel's getting ready to leave, and he realizes that he's not alone. He slowly turns around, like you said. It's that build up again, that tension. You're just like, oh shoot.
Yeah, and at that point, Caesar also thinks Cornelius, his new son, is dead too.
Yeah,
because there's just bodies laying here. So Caesar has lost everything at this point, and he's just ready to die trying to kill this guy, and he almost does when the colonel drops him off the rope. But I mean, that entire buildup is amazing.
Yeah.
And it leads us to Caesar's major mistake and his flaw that will doom himself and almost doom his entire civilization. And that is, he allows revenge to take precedence over the protection of his people.
Yep.
And not only do we see that with him sending them off into the desert, there's a lot of biblical stuff in this too. They have to go off into the desert and all that good stuff. But not only do we see him sending his own people off, but he's also giving up his only son that's left. And that gets hit on later on in the film where he says he should never have given up Cornelius. Oh, he doesn't say it, but you can see it. He realizes he should never have given up Cornelius to somebody else. He should have protected his son, protected his people from the beginning. But revenge took hold. And it's such a very good way to see this character have to deal with that, because for the most part in Rise and definitely in Dawn, Caesar is infallible. I mean, Kobo likes to think he's fallible and plays off on that, but really Caesar is, Caesar's got a halo over his head most of the time. But in this one, for the most of the movie, Caesar's not a good guy.
No.
He's made some bad choices, and he gets a couple of his friends killed. Luca gets killed trying to protect him when Caesar should not have gone towards the base because Bad Ape had told him it was a bad idea, but he didn't care. Maurice tells him again it's a bad idea. He almost gets Maurice and Rocket killed in the process, and he almost gets everybody killed because he's making poor decisions.
Well, let's not forget though, as he told his group of people to leave, and he's going to go off on his path of revenge to not lead his people end up getting captured anyway because he's not there to lead them.
Yeah, and we're led to believe that Caesar could have stopped that from happening. Who knows? But Caesar should have been there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I do like the fact that he has to regain that leadership. I think it probably should have gone a little bit. There should have been a little bit more time to pad out the fact that his people have given up on him and have turned their backs on him. We literally see them all turn their backs on him. But I wish there would have been a little bit more build up to that. But even so, in the rock quarry, when they all decide to protect him again and basically follow his lead again, it's again that turn where he realizes that his revenge is less important than the survival of his people, and it's a great, again, it's just a wonderful character piece for Caesar all the way around. I can go beat by beat the entire movie, but I'll just be talking for 2 hours. So
absolutely. Another scene I really enjoyed was the beginning. You think that this group of soldiers have found an outpost. And you think that they're just going to slaughter, and they do start slaughtering, and then they send off a sentry out, and he goes and he rallies, and you're like, oh, this could be really good. And all of a sudden, they come out of the mist, and it was just really epic, and like, okay, this is going to be an awesome movie. Like right from the start, it really set the tone.
Agreed. So let's go ahead and let's stop, loving on this movie so much, and let's talk about some things that we didn't like about the movie, some scenes or some aspects that we didn't like. Go ahead.
As you had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of, just because you are remaking or leading up to a movie that was made famous by Charlton Heston, you don't need to make it a Charlton Heston character piece and make Moses be Caesar. I will lead you to the promised land. Just make it a story about Caesar, which I believe they did, but there was a lot of undertones that could have been left without.
He gets a spear to the rib at the end. Come on.
Right. I also didn't like that there was no, how do I want to put this? There was no, I wanted to see more humans in it, not military. Just having one, and that be Nova, which was a throwback to the original because, Charlton Heston's love interest in Planet of the Apes was named Nova, and she couldn't speak. But there needed to be more. Like, you saw the dad, and the dad was trying, because, the colonel is, if you get the disease, I'm going to kill you. I don't care who you are, I'm going to shoot you. And so, he even said that people have left. Where are those people? I would love to see more people like that. And because then that leads to Planet of the Apes, where how the apes enslaved those people, just like Nova sided with Caesar, that'd be great to see something like that. But only having one good one good human character, I was like, in the previous movies you had James Franco and all those people, and then the second movie you had Kerry Russell and
what's his face? Yeah,
that guy. um,
he's John Connor in the really crappy Terminator movie.
Right. So it's just like, I would want to have seen more of that. But to the defense of that, you have making it solely a movie showing that the apes are good. It's a one-off. So, but yeah, those are some things that I didn't like. What about you?
No, yeah, the undertones get a little bit preachy at times.
Yep.
When he gets crucified and when he gets stabbed in the ribs with a spear, but I do like that. Aside from that, I do like that he basically becomes a Martin Luther King character too. There's definitely some aspects of that. The famous line from Dr. King is he's seen the promised land, but he may not make it there with you. And I didn't even see it coming until the very end, when obviously he's sitting there ready to keel over dead, but he never makes it into the valley. He's up there on the cliff face. He's still kind of in the desert because going back to the biblical undertones, it's that original sin thing too. He has sinned. He has killed other apes, whether it was Koba in self-defense or whether it was Winter, basically because he was just pissed off at the time. Because of that, he's not allowed in. And so he dies there at the threshold. But he also knows that his people are going to have a better life because of the sacrifices that he made. I agree with you. I would have liked to see more humans. I would have liked to see John Connor. I'm forgetting the actor's name. I would have liked to see John Connor come back because one of the things I don't like about this trilogy, and I think it goes against the cusp of what this trilogy is trying to say, and that's why I don't like it. I mean, if it was a story point and it was a choice, that's fine. But my big issue, and again, as one of the few people in the world who likes Conquest 4 and Battle of Planet of the Apes, at the end of Battle of the Planet of the Apes, we come full circle and we realize that because of all the choices that the humans and the apes have made, we are in a better timeline. At the beginning of Escape, the Cornelius and Zira leave with little baby Caesar on the way, leave the planet right before it explodes, and get back to Earth of the past. And because of their humanity, and because of Ricardo Montalban's humanity and the Conquest, and obviously Caesar throughout the two films, at the end we flash forward to the future, and we see the lawgiver, and we see the apes are in complete control, but they're not, because then we pan out and we see there are humans and apes living together, learning together, and basically in school. Yeah, so because of the choices they made, the future was not set. They changed things for the better. Unfortunately, with this film, I don't think we get the same thing. I think this film is setting us up to be a direct prequel
Planet of the Apes.
To Planet of the Apes, to a point where they may have constricted the timeline a little bit, because I think what they want to do is they want to get us to a point where this Nova is the true Nova. So instead of being 2,000 years, it's only been 30 or 40 at that point. But I think they're trying to get to a point where if they did want to do that Charlton Heston movie, they could. And that's unfortunate, because I think it goes against the themes of the show. And that is that equality is what Caesar was truly going for at the end. And if you would have had more humans, even a few, that followed them into the promised land, desert oasis, whatever you want to call it, you had a few of them that followed them in, you would at least have, you don't have to show me the future, I can make it up for myself, but at least I would have an idea that there's a chance for these people.
They can coexist, and then if something goes wrong, and then that's when the apes take over, but you don't get that, like you said.
Yeah, and I don't want the apes to take over. I want humanity to survive, but with Nova not having the ability to speak and it being 100% transferable from what we can see, it's obviously that, and the Colonel's right. The Colonel was in the scene in the office when he says, "We will become your cattle." He's right. because that's what's going to happen based on this timeline. And I don't like that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Another aspect I didn't like was, and it's funny because last week I was complaining that Spider-Man Homecoming was too long. This movie was about the same length, and I wanted it to be a little longer because at the end, when we have the battle between the forces of, for lack of a better term, the North, and the forces of the Alpha and Omega take each other on, and the forces of the North win, you're thinking, okay, what happens now? How is Caesar going to get out of this? Caesar's wounded. He's facing down this army, and there's got to be some way that he's going to figure this out. No, Deus Ex Avalanche comes.
It's quite funny. I mean, Caesar causes this, convenient explosion. Well, the best part is like he takes out these people on the wall that are shooting at the other people that are advancing just by blowing up a gas tank. But conveniently, another gas tank that's connected to everything in the building just happens to catch fire and cause this ginormous avalanche that apes can miraculously escape as climbing trees. But I'm sorry, but like with all that wind blowing, why did an ape not fall off? I mean,
oh man, and the movie is so good. I'm gonna give it a pass on that. Okay. But it was just lazy script writing at that point.
Yeah, they're like, we made a good movie at this point.
Even if you show the apes running away and realizing there's still military forces out there, shit's gonna still hit the fan sooner or later. That's fine. But instead, it's like we have to wipe every single human off the map to end this movie, to end this trilogy. We have to leave Nova on her own. She's never going to procreate with anybody, so the human race is done. We got to wipe these guys out. Oh crap! We just put a military in there. How are we going to wipe them out? Throw some snow on them. They'll be fine. It's lazy script writing, and unfortunately, that's how they tack off the movie. But an extra 10 minutes of something, would have been perfect there. I'm not saying everyone lives to sing Kumbaya, but at least give me something other than an avalanche.
Well, something that they could have done is, Alpha, this military group was called Alpha and Omega. And of course, beneath the planet of the apes, they worshipped a nuclear bomb called Alpha and Omega. Yep. So even if something like Caesar discovers that bomb that that these humans worship, and that, Caesar's sitting there pointing at the advancing troops in the north and like, okay, maybe we should retreat. That's even better because that gives a show that, the apes know what they're doing and they have the firepower instead of saying, oh, here's an avalanche, everyone's buried.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. And, they really try throughout the movie to give you an idea of scope. And I think that's the other thing that I wish this trilogy would have had a little bit more in that scope. Through most of it, we don't leave San Francisco. We don't leave Northern California. We get basically to the border, and that's about it. So we see a little bit of Oregon, I guess, which I'm not entirely sure why there's deserts in Oregon, but I'm going to let it go.
Yeah.
But I wish I would have seen a little bit more. We get a little bit of that with Bad Ape, and even Maurice, Luca, and Caesar, all three kind of say, well, we thought we were the only ones, but Bad Ape was not a part of our original cohort, so this expanded past where we are, and maybe there are other apes all around the world. I would have liked to see that, even if it's like, another guilty pleasure of mine is The Postman, which is a post-apocalyptic Kevin Costner movie. But the idea there is Kevin Costner is pretending and making up the fact that there is a whole country back after the apocalypse, and he represents it, and obviously he's lying. But then, randomly in the movie, and they don't really hit on it at all, is a guy from elsewhere shows up and says that he's from another government too. So at that point, we realize there is something more out there, and it just builds the universe. I wish we would have got that a little bit more of that here in War than we did. But I'm nitpicking at that point.
Well, and like you said with scope, I mean, we get it that, it's been 20 years where people have been dying out, and, obviously things aren't going to change, because we're not going to be able to take care of ourselves as we not really doing right now. But, people aren't going to tend things. So, you may see deserts expand, or you may see, winters be a little harsher because there's not a lot of whatever. Just give us something, we understand that it's an apocalypse movie, but don't, we're going to assume things, but, just like you did in the beginning, they did a great opening credits reel where they said, They basically said 2 sentences about Rise and highlighted the word Rise, said 2 sentences about Dawn and highlighted Dawn, and then they said 2 little sentences about War and highlighted War, and then that war turned into War for Planet of the Apes. Give us a little snapshot of what the Earth looks like. Our desert's expanding, or how is that working? Because being in California when the movie takes place,
California,
and Planet of the Apes takes place in New York with that very famous scene of Charlton Heston discovering Lady Liberty buried, up to her chin in desert. It's give us a little bit of scope of how the Earth. Yeah. Give us a little bit of scope of what's going on with the world. I mean, we know that we're in apocalypse mode, but how is the world changing? We understand that there's conflict, but how is the world changing? Because people aren't able to do their jobs and, take care of things that could possibly run amok nature-wise if there's not tended to. So.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that, and I think that's the one area throughout these films, and I think Rise does it best, believe it or not, with that in credit scene where we see the strain of the virus moving across the country to country, the world, yeah, and then in Dawn we get a little bit of them talking, exposition through news broadcasts saying that this is happening all over the world. I would have liked to see that go on, and I honestly hope that they don't continue this story, because I think Caesar's story is done.
Yep.
But it's in its first weekend, it took down the juggernaut that is Spider-Man: Homecoming.
I think it was better than Spider-Man, to be completely honest.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, it took down the juggernaut that is Spider-Man: Homecoming in its second week of release, which tells me that 20th Century Fox is not done with Planet of the Apes.
Oh no,
whether we like it or not.
No.
Okay, let's go ahead and go into that ranking then. Let's give our thoughts on how this film ranks, both for itself. So we'll give it a score of 1 to 10. But also, I'd like to see what you think, how it ranks in the trilogy of these 3: Rise, Dawn, and War. And then after that, we'll talk about what we see the future of this franchise being. So go ahead, Ryan, and give us your score of 1 to 10 for War for the Planet of the Apes.
1 through 10, 10 being the best and 1 being the worst. I'm going to have to rank it. Probably, I want to say 8, but I'm going to go 9, because it's unbelievable, because it can be a standalone movie. As a conclusion, it is brilliant. It brings everything together. But it's like I told my friends, and I said, this isn't just a popcorn movie. This is a genuinely good movie. The cinematography, the music, the CGI. As a movie in and of itself, it is Oscar worthy. But of course, the Oscars and everybody at the Academy are a bunch of hacks, and they will never recognize it because it was released in the summer. They don't recognize blockbuster movies, which they're full of crap. But as a movie, it was beautiful. Some of the cinematography just made the movie so much more emotional. The lighting is, I can't explain it. The final shot of the movie is so awesome. And I'll get, when we talk later, what I think how that's going to end. But I mean, as a movie in and of itself, phenomenal. I give it a 9. Ranking, I honestly think that these movies get better. Rise was good. Dawn was better. War was the icing on the cake, the best one out there. And my friends, I get into arguments with it. They're like, I don't like this. I don't like these. I don't like these movies. I never got into them. I'm like, they're good movies. They're genuinely good movies, and they play off of each other. They get better as they go. And War was just phenomenal. So yeah, that's my viewpoint.
Yeah, you said already that you think this is the best film of the year, and I'm going to agree with you.
Yep.
I gave Spider-Man: Homecoming an 8 last week. I gave it a 9 after Jeremy pestered me to give it a 9, but I gave it an 8 originally. I'm going to give War a 9, and you know what? It would get a 10 if not for the Avalanche. I love a good Western, and we don't get Westerns anymore. And this is a Western. You think you're going to get a war movie, and the posters lie to you. When you look at the main poster is an army of apes and an army of humans about ready to do a Braveheart move.
And that doesn't happen once.
It never happens. The most you're going to get is a little skirmish at the beginning of the movie, but the rest of it, the apes are just trying to survive. That's all it is. And the war is the inner conflict that Caesar has within him, and I'm completely fine with that. But I think that this movie goes so far beyond a summer blockbuster. This is a smart sci-fi film that does what a good genre film does, and that is makes you think about the world around you after you leave the theater.
Yep.
And it does it very well. We've already talked about why it does. In terms of my rankings, I agree with you. When I came into Rise and saw it in the theater, I was not expecting anything because Tim Burton had burned me so much on his remake that I just figured, okay, you can't do this again. It's just going to be terrible. And I was just so floored by how I was wrong when I saw Rise because it was such a good movie. The scenes of them in the ape sanctuary, the whole thing is just great. And then when Dawn came out, I went in with more expectations, and it knocked those expectations to the floor. I mean, it was an amazing film, some really good work. And the end battle between Koba and Caesar, I still, as much as I'm the guy who harps on CGI, it looked breathtaking. But then when you get to war, and actually I was kind of withholding some excitement because it's a third in a trilogy, and we know how that usually goes, Dark Knight Rises. But halfway through the film, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is one of the best films I've ever seen because there's so much going on.
Yep.
And so yeah, definitely War is the best one of these. So let's go ahead and talk about where we see this franchise going. Obviously, the Caesar trilogy is over. It ends with Caesar breathing his last breath, and that's how the film ends. But Ryan, where do you see this franchise going, if anywhere?
Well, I mean, Andy Serkis in an interview with MTV said, these films could go on, and they're going to. I mean, you have a movie that brought down a Marvel movie, especially with D23 out right now and all the hype around Infinity War. So that last scene, I mean, first of all, you have Nova, and Nova is Charlton Heston's love interest in Planet of the Apes, the original, an adult Nova. So we still got some time to go. One of the main leaders of the apes in the original Planet of the Apes was Cornelius, and he is the last member of Caesar's family. You also have in Rise, you have a news clip of the Icarus taking off, and the Icarus was the name of the shuttle. No, was it the Icarus? What was it? Yeah, okay. So it was the Icarus taking off, and that was Charlton Heston's ship in Planet of the Apes. Now, final scene is Caesar's dead. Caesar's fallen over. He's sitting there. He's slowly leaning to the left. Slowly, he takes his last breath, and he falls over. He's dead. And all the apes are rejoicing, and the shot is from behind Caesar and Maurice as they're sitting down looking on everyone else being happy, and everyone stops, and they realize Caesar's dead, and the camera slowly pans up to a very auburn, purple, orange sky, but out of the right-hand side, you see like blue space, and you see a star go brighter and brighter, and I'm thinking, is that the Icarus coming back? Is it about to crash land? I don't know. That was just me. I kind of saw that out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, what is going on right now? Are they going to do this right now? Is it too soon? I'm like, it's too soon. I think they were just alluding to it.
I'm not quite sure what kind of popcorn you're eating, but I didn't see any star in mine, but go ahead.
Maybe it was just they tried to do like a flare. I don't know. Maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe I was just getting excited because I was so happy with the movie. But I think they're definitely leading up to a Planet of the Apes. And I don't know where they're going to go from that, but they are leading up to a Planet of the Apes because they played so much homage to the original, not just the first movie, but to all 5 movies, because Caesar doesn't come into play until the last 2 movies, like you said. But they're gearing up for it. I guarantee it. They're going to make another one.
Yeah, the only thing they didn't throw at us with the kitchen sink in terms of the Easter eggs here was we didn't get Zira. That's
I was going to say Dr. Zaius.
Dr. Zaius, too. but we got everything else in terms of Nova. We got Cornelius. All of that's kind of set up, and that's what I agree with you. I think that's probably where they want to go, and that is they've just compressed the timeline.
Yeah.
So instead of going 2,000 years into the future, these
50.
guys are going to show up. Let's see, it's 15 years after Rise right now. Nova is probably 10 years old. So let's 25 years after the apocalypse, and these guys show back up or something. And I truly, I mean, the way these guys are writing these scripts, I'm okay with it, and I'll go see it. But I wish that they would let this one die with Caesar, because I just think this is Caesar's story. There's plenty of more stuff you can do in that, but also I'm, as the forever optimist, I don't want to see that story, because that proves the Colonel right. If we see that story where humanity is completely turned into cattle, the Colonel was right, and I don't want that. I want Caesar's sacrifice to be. Here comes another biblical thing, which is funny coming from me, but I want Caesar's sacrifice to be for everybody and to save everybody at the end. But I think you're right. I think we're going to get Charlton Heston 2.0. I think that's where they're heading. And I'll go see.
You sure not Mark Wahlberg?
Sir, you go to hell, sir. You go to hell and you die, sir. Marky Mark does not compute. But the other thing,
Hercules.
Because we have not said the man's name, and we need to. As much as I'm a DC hater right now with the DC films, except for Wonder Woman, that was good.
Matt Reeves.
Matt Reeves, as director of both Dawn and Rise, I am so excited to see what he does with Batman.
Thank you for bringing that up, because Batman is my, I love Marvel movies, Marvel comics, 100%. But my favorite superhero is Batman. And when Matt Reeves directed Dawn and War, I was like, holy crap, I am officially excited for Batman, because I hate the DC movies, or at least let me rephrase that, the modern DC movies.
Yes.
What the direction, it's just, I'm like, stop it. But now that Matt Reeves is scrapping Ben Affleck's script,
I'm glad you hit on that too.
and starting on his own thing, I'm like, run with it, dude, because you can take something like Planet of the Apes, make it your own, and make it unique, and make it well. Mm-hmm. Do it for Batman, please.
Do it for Batman. Come on, do it for us. But no, you're right. And I see Matt Reeves as partially the saving grace of the DC Extended Universe, is what they're calling it, DCEU. You have first Wonder Woman and that coming out and being relative. I mean, it's not relatively good. It's really good, except for the Instagram filter. It's great. And Joss Whedon's going to come in and try to salvage Justice League. I still think that's going to be terrible based on what I've seen. But he's going to try to salvage that, and he's probably going to give us a really good Batwoman. But Matt Reeves, I think, is a perfect choice for that. And the fact that he is scrapping everything that came for it before him joining the movie tells me two things. One, it tells me that finally DC is allowing a director to make a choice for themselves.
Right.
So far, this has been Zack Snyder's world, and everyone's just playing in it. Matt Reeves came in and said, look at my pedigree. I took two movies that people probably thought should have been a joke, and I have made cinema gold. So here's the deal. You're going to let me do what I want to do. And I'm so excited to see what he's going to do with that. I like his work so far, and I'm looking forward to it. So I think he has the potential of making a movie that I'm actually going to like out of the DC universe, which is hard to do.
Fingers crossed.
We got a few years to figure it out. Well, Ryan, do you have any closing comments you want to make? I think we've kind of beat the horse to death at this point, or beat the donkey for that.
If you have not seen the movie, seriously, go see it. It is. I'm a big movie guy, and all my friends know that. And when I told them, like, okay, maybe we'll give this a shot, even though it was one that they trashed, a lot of them were considering it now. It is a phenomenal movie, and out of all the movies out of 2017, even some of the dramas, even some of the comedies, whatever, I don't care. War for Planet of the Apes, best movie of 2017 thus far.
Yeah, I'm just going to ditto that. I completely agree with you. It is the best movie I've seen so far. And based on what's coming out, I think it could definitely be the best movie of the year for me. I'm excited to see a couple more as they come out, but I think this one's going to be hard to top. So we'll go ahead and conclude our discussion there on that. But if you want to find out more about the Front Row Movie Reviews, you can find us at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. There you can find all of our full disclosures as well as our other shows, including our Disney show Beyond the Mouse, our classics, which is looking at movies from the golden age of Hollywood, my flashbacks from movies that are not from the golden age of Hollywood, the 80s and 90s, as well as our Twilight Zone retrospective Zonesodes, and our brand new show that just started last week, and that is Jeremy's review of every single episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? He decided to one up my Twilight Zone retrospective with that, so take that as you will. But you can see all those at thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. And I want to point out we've been talking here for about an hour, and in the middle of our conversation, sad news came across the Googles, and that is Martin Landau passed away today.
Yep, so, I saw that.
Yeah, he's passed away at the age of 89. So I wanted to give a little shout out to Martin Landau. We actually talked about him in one of our classic episode discussions, and I'm forgetting which one it was now, but we talked about him. So until next time, and I think we're actually planning on doing next time being, for the full disclosures, we can look at Dunkirk next week. So until next time, I am Scott McFarland, and with me has been
Ryan Lutens. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming back, Ryan. We appreciate it. And until next time, we will see you all in the front row. Have a good night, guys.
See ya.